Give you a little intro. So for anyone that doesn't know, Brandon May is the nicest human being possibly I've ever met in my entire life. Brandon and I started at Blue Sky within about a week of each other. I think we started about a week after I did. We were lighting TAs, which is a nice way of saying render wranglers early on in our careers. We worked on probably 7 or 8 movies together before Brandon made the move out to Vancouver. You started at Sony. You did 3 films out at Sony, right?
Yeah. Yep. I did
Spider-Verse,
Hotel Transylvania, Smallfoot, and Spiderman Into the Spiderverse.
That's right. And most recently, you were working at what's the name of the studio that you were at?
It's called Braun.
Braun,
we did the movie The Willoughbys on Netflix.
Very nice. So we talked a little bit about. That's right. You worked on The Willoughbys, which just came out. Everyone, people were so excited because they were just wanting new movies to come out, and it got everyone that I saw really, really liked it.
Yeah. Yep. It was great.
So how have you found working in Vancouver? That's kind of like the hotspot of places to be now.
Yeah. No, it's great. When you first get here, you start immediately networking, and that becomes really easy because everyone's here, and everyone that you work with in whatever studio you're at, they've all worked in all the other studios. So they all have so as I've been looking for a job with the coronavirus issues that we have, I'll have friends be contacted by one of their former employees, and they're like, no, but I know a guy, and then they contact me. It's really nice, and it becomes really easy because it's all right here. So yeah. It's nice.
That's great. So when you we've talked a little bit when we were talking about the difference between working at a larger studio like a Blue Sky or a Sony versus a smaller studio like Braun. And you kind of like the smaller studio, or you kind of grown more to it. What do you like about them more? What are the differences to you?
I don't know if I liked it more. And it is a smaller studio by budget. We still had, I think there was 35 lighting, something like that. I don't know. It was around there. So, I mean, it's not huge. Sony was huge. But by comparison to Blue Sky, we were pretty similar in department size. But yeah, sorry, I'm rambling. It was small by most standards. I don't know if I prefer one or the other. What I like about big studios is that everything is done, right? If you have a problem, someone's taking care of it. And at a small studio, if you have a problem, you have to fix it or work around it or wait a long time for it to be fixed. Those are the trade-offs or the differences. The trade-off to a smaller studio is that you have a smaller group of people, and it becomes this really kind of tight-knit group of people that you enjoy being around. In a bigger studio, you just didn't know half the people, and it almost it didn't matter that you were there. It was different, very different.
So I kind of want to take a step back, and because one of the things I like to do when we bring people on is to talk about your up and coming story. So a lot of people on this call are trying to get into the industry, and you've had a unique path. I think, as you know, working in this industry, no one has a straight linear path of I knew in high school I wanted to be a lighting artist, but you didn't start college until later on. It was your wife that actually, that Laura actually was the one that encouraged you to start taking art classes, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I was contemplating law, which in looking back at it, it wouldn't have worked very well for me. I wouldn't have liked it. But after I got married, my wife was like, I don't think this is what you want to do. And she started pushing me into the art side, and I finally started taking some art classes, and I loved it, and I switched. So yeah, it came about, and it was nice when it happened. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you were at BYU for a while.
Yeah, I started my kind of my animation stuff at BYU, and then when just before I graduated, I got an internship at Disney Interactive making video games, and I was working on Hannah Montana World Tour. And then we moved on to Bolt, the video game. And at that point, it was in 2008 when the economy crashed in the United States, and no one was really looking to hire anybody. Most places were on hold. It was not a good time to be looking for a job. So, as Mike, you probably know, I felt extremely lucky to be one of the few people to get a job that year.
Mm.
But yeah, so I was doing video games, and I didn't want to do video games. I wanted to do lighting, and once I started to realize that no one was looking, I started to dive more into the video games, and I started enjoying it, and I was called what they call a world builder. So I would model, put the materials on, light it. I would do everything for a certain level of the game. But then Blue Sky came around and called me and gave me a job, and it was fantastic. But that was right just after I graduated. So well, it was a few months, but I stayed at Disney Interactive until I got that job at Blue Sky. Yeah, so I wanted to be a lawyer, started going to school for art, and animation, started doing video games, quit video games to do movies, and I've been there ever since, and I love it. And all I've done in my career is feature animation, and that's it.
Yeah.
There tends to be this like kind of awkwardness between feature animation houses hiring people who do VFX and VFX studios hiring people who have traditional feature animation stuff only. Becomes really weird.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I mean, I've only ever worked on animated films as well, so it's
Yeah. Out here, half the places I can work for we're dealing with feature animation, and I'm like, that would be great to be able to have that side, start networking on that side. So I started applying there, and now they would turn me down, and I'm like, and I emailed back one particular company, and I was like, hey, I'm kind of finding this awkward at this point in my career, having this challenge. Like, I don't quite understand what's going on. And the lighting supervisor emailed me back, and he goes, look, there's no question your demo reel is great, and that you have a great eye. Like, there's no question there. And he goes, the problem is that there's only half of what we do in a VFX studio. And what's interesting is every time I talk to a VFX artist that's working in animation and feature animation, they're like, no, it's the same. It's the same. One of my best friends up here is he's a lead at ILM, and he's like, no, that's stupid. He's like, it's the exact same thing.
no, that's
Which you do. There are certain differences, of course, but
making stuff look good is making stuff look good. It's like
what it comes down to is you're an artist,
yeah.
and yeah, it's the tools or a particular pipeline that you need to get used to, but you have to do that in any studio you move to.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So if you guys have questions, I mean, either chime in or throw them in the chat window. But because I can just talk, Brandon and I carpooled for like 5 years together, so we've gotten very good at just chatting. So we can do this all night. So you've worked on a bunch of movies. What's your favorite project you worked
on? I was dreading the job at Braun,
on?
my last contract. I looked at their previous work, and it was really not good, and I was like, oh god. But there was nowhere else. There was nowhere else to go at the time, and I didn't want to have a big gap in my employment. So I was like, oh god, what do I do? But then I went in for the interview, and I started looking at the stuff they're working. I was like, oh, that actually looks pretty good. The Willoughbys was made on a really small budget. It was made for $40 million.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a really small budget, and a lot of the people that we worked with in the lighting team were pretty new, pretty inexperienced people. But the project itself, and like I said, with a smaller studio, you're going to have a lot more. We had a lot of growing pains. It was their first feature animation. They were building a pipeline, and I was a lead there, so it was a lot was put on us as leads and the supervisor to like develop and make the pipeline, and it was not easy at first, but man, it started rolling, it started cooking. It's funny how like you start working out all the kinks and figuring things out, and it worked. It ended up being a really fun project because I think because it was such a small budget.
Mhm.
At Blue Sky, you never. How often do you talk to the director?
It's getting more and more, but yeah, totally. Like it's
When
like
I
a
was
500 or 600 person company now, so it's not as often as.
Yeah, well, even at Sony, we had on Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse, I think there was 150 lighters on it at the end.
Mm,
150.
that's crazy. So just so you guys know, some of these numbers, like I would say, I mean, like at Blue Sky, we have like maybe 40, 50 lighters. And then in terms of the budget, he was saying like a $40 million budget for Willoughbys. Blue Sky movies are usually like 100 to 120 million. Pixar movies are like 200 million. Like they are, they're well up there. Um,
Yeah.
Katarina made a really good point about the color keys in Willoughbys and how like you can really see the color keys in the final product. Was what was that process like for you? Did you guys have like a art department that was painting stuff for you, or?
Yeah. Yep. So we had that was one of the things that they took me on it, like in my interview. We walk into an interview room, and at the back was all the color keys, and I was like, oh, this is actually looking really nice. This is actually looking really cool, like top notch. And the art director for it was I don't remember if he was the art director. I think he was. I think he was the art director for Sausage Party. uh, so he had just one previous experience working as a art director, and then this. And he's really talented guy. So he would, and he was dealing with us on a daily basis, which was great, like constantly giving us feedback. And every day we'd also have the director in the meetings with us every day.
That's great.
And he was the director for Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2. I don't know what else he's done, but that was the one that I knew of. And he's also the head of story on the first Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. So a really funny guy, really knew what he was doing, and I was immediately impressed. Versus you tend to sometimes you get directors that are people who have just been in the company long enough that they call themselves directors. Those people drive you crazy. They're so wishy-washy. They don't know what they want. It goes all over the place. They're not real directors. Real directors, you could, like, oh man, I worked with Gendy. I don't remember how to say his last name, but on Hotel Transylvania 3, Gendy I don't remember. Sorry, I don't remember his last name. Someone will chat it probably. The Samurai Jack guy. Um, he was amazing. So that was the first director I had after leaving Blue Sky, and I was like, "This is what a real director's like! Holy crap!" It was so good, and it was on Hotel Transylvania 3. But it was a great, for me, it was a great experience to have that contrast.
Yeah.
It was really, really nice.
And you're just talking about like leadership, which is great, which is like this leadership of a person who knows what they want, and you can get on board with that and run with it. It's hard when someone doesn't know what they want.
Yeah, and it became a thing where like you didn't even need to have him look at it anymore because you knew what he wanted. You already knew what he wanted. It was so perfect.
And it's
Yeah. Yeah. Just read it. It's in the chat. It's in the chat.
GenDT.
Yeah.
So Juan Lopez wants to know: would you say Canada is the best place to start in the industry as a lighter? Is it the new LA?
Well, it's not a bad place to start for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I've loved it. I've loved it here. It's great. It's really great. The unfortunate circumstance that we have right now is not great, but I mean that's just COVID, and that's going to be everywhere. That you're going to have some kind of problem or issue having to work from home, or delays because they've had to ship everybody home and figure things out. Whatever the case may be, COVID has definitely hurt the entire industry. But with COVID aside, Vancouver's a great place to start. Montreal's picking up a ton right now too. So if you wanted to, I wouldn't be afraid. Like for me, if I were starting out, I wouldn't. My advice would be: don't be afraid of Montreal. Don't be afraid of Los Angeles. Don't be afraid of Vancouver. Honestly, don't be afraid of anywhere that would give you a job. Um, but as far as contract basis uh, work or employment goes, being in Vancouver or LA or Montreal, you have so many studios there that you can just bounce back and forth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point. That kind of leads into the next one because Eric wants to know what's the best advice you can give a young lighter trying to break into the industry.
What's the what?
Best advice you can give someone who's trying to break into the industry as a lighter.
I teach a small class. I had a class of 10 students. Um, I teach for a different school,
Don't you
and
dare mention their name to me right now.
it's called Pepe's School for Lighters and Wannabe. No,
I'm only teasing. I'm only teasing you. I love you, buddy.
yeah, no. But I thought about this, and I talked to them about this a couple days ago. But when I first started, it seems pretty daunting, and it seems and like I said, it was 2008 when the economy crashed, and not many people were looking. Um, and it was easy to get discouraged. When really over and over and over again, and as easy it is for me to say, don't get discouraged. That would be my number one thing: is don't get discouraged. Don't like it is purely timing, your demo reel, and who you know.
Hmm.
Timing, demo reel, who you know. You can have the best demo reel in the world, but if the timing's off, you're not getting a job. It doesn't matter. Um, who you know, I think makes it easier. So, anyone out there, if you guys aren't networking in any fashion, make sure that you reach out to Mike Tanzillo or myself, and get start to get to know people, or get your stuff in front of people. In the politest way possible, right? Like you don't want to bug people, but um, it's don't get discouraged and keep going. Just keep going because if you try now and it doesn't work out, it's because the timing wasn't right.
Yeah.
And there are places like Sony that will constantly, over and over and over again, have a lighting position put up there, even though they have no positions open. So you can run into a situation where you apply for a place and they turn you down, even though it looks like they had a job opening, they didn't, right? So, or if you catch it too late, I've had a couple of times where they reach out to me for my after I've applied, and they're like, "Oh, we just finalized the contract for the last position we had." So timing is huge, and I think I get those responses because of how much experience I have, right? So not everyone gets the personal email from the recruiters saying, "Hey, this is what's going on." Not everybody gets that, so you have to be patient, stay positive, and keep going, and keep
We,
working. Just
we
keep lighting over, and as you're waiting, keep lighting.
I mean, because we were on the other end of the table a couple of times where we were interviewing people for jobs that we've already made offers to people about, you know what I mean? Like we're just waiting to see if that person accepts it's theirs in this interview, no matter how well they did, it's like, there's not a position.
Yeah,
So it's like,
yeah,
it's tough to know when you're in that position because as the company, you can't really say that, but yeah, timing unfortunately is one of the is one of the most important things. Um, what is the process like of getting a job in Canada as a U.S. citizen? Outside of COVID, how difficult is it to work abroad and outside the U.S. in general?
uh, it was actually pretty easy. um, what's great about Canada is it's so similar to the US. And it was really easy. The main things for me were a little bit unique to myself, maybe, perhaps, depending on your situation. Like, for example, I have 4 kids, so we didn't know how the healthcare system worked and how they would get healthcare, and we didn't know how they could start school. And it turns out it took them an extra month to be able to start school here after we moved here. It was just because of the way things worked out. But no, once you get the job, the studio takes care of all the paperwork. Um, they get you set up on your work permit. All you have to do is go to the border, and uh, pay a fee. And for me, it's never been even a question. It's like, okay, here you go. It was never a problem, and I had to do it twice. So for my two jobs, Sony and Braun. But when I first started when I first started at Sony, coming from the United States, Sony also emailed me a huge uh, kind of checklist, or hey, here's a heads up. Go ahead. Definitely do this. Make sure you don't do that. Like they said, do not cross into the border until you get your work permit approved. Like, do not come in. And the day we were coming in, we moved across the entire United States. So it's not like we could, and it was really late at night, and it was I think it was the day before New Year's, or maybe it was New Year's Eve. I don't know. Anyway, um, uh, the printer broke. The printer they had to print off the work permits broke, and so they're like, "Go ahead and come on in. Get a hotel. Otherwise, you have to turn around and drive another 30 minutes back." And it took us 2 hours in line at the border because it was a particularly long wait time at the border. So like, just go ahead and come in and get a hotel right here in town, and just come back tomorrow when the printer's fixed. And we were like, "No, we'll wait," because we were told by Sony that like, "Hey, you got to wait. You can't come in." And they were kind of like, "Oh God, just go already." But it ended up that we sent our kids with my mom to get a hotel, and me and my wife stayed there and got all the work permits settled. But it was really easy.
Mhm.
Once you get all of your paperwork sent to whatever studio you're working for, they'll ask for like your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, and if you have kids, their birth certificates and stuff like that, right? And they do all the heavy lifting. For me, it was
So
keeping a record, and we kept a very good record of all those things, just in case they needed to see anything at the border. But it's very, very detailed in black and white in any paperwork you would get from the studio you start at. So
that's great.
it's easy.
Right. Katarina wants to know, what were some ways in learning how to develop your eye for lighting? Like, how did you develop your artistic eye for this stuff?
Um, yeah, I think it's just lighting over and over again. Just keep going, no matter what. Just keep going. And actually, one of the studios I was applying at when I was trying to quit Blue Sky was for Naughty Dog. They're a game studio that does they do really good looking video games. And their process for video games is they start lighting when everything's Lambert shaded,
Mhm.
and then they set up all their lights, and then once that they're done with that, then they put on like an overall general color for something. So if you have um, an Oriental rug with a whole bunch of different colors in there, they'll pick one generic color for it, an overall like the main color for it, and make it that color, and make the wall color one specific color, make the floor, if you have a bunch of different wood grain, it's just going to be brown, right? Like one color of brown. They put everything one solid color material on everything, and then they tweak their lights, and then after that process is done, then they work with the final materials, and then tweak their lights one more time. And I'm not exactly sure, but I think that their video games look that way, and the reason why they do that is so that they can get in the process earlier, right? So they're not so rushed and crunched at the end. They have more time to set up, more time to make it look good, more time to work out some lighting tweaks. So that's their process. So when they sent me, they sent people tests in the video game world. It doesn't matter. Like for me, it didn't matter that I had almost 10 years at Blue Sky and that I had another year at a video game studio before, right? They didn't care about that. They wanted to send me a test. So they sent me a whole bunch of a couple of different scenes, and they're like, in these 10 different camera angles, light them and give it back to us, uh, and make it whatever you want, and take as much time as you want. And it was all Lambert shaded, so they wanted me to keep it Lambert shaded, and I found it to be a very unique challenge. I I started to really I had to really like push myself to get it to look great, because you're not working with regular specularity or color or anything like that to help differentiate the characters from the background. It was actually a really fun challenge. So even if you have some kind of scene or character animation, or even just a couple of rigs, and they're only Lambert shader, it doesn't matter. Light it, and then light it in 5 different ways. Sunrise, sunset, middle day, lamp shaded, neon lights behind them. Car lights behind them, candle lights. Pick any lighting scenario and just change it up. And I think those are really good practices. And even some things that you can put on a demo reel of like, hey, here's this one scene that is put to different lighting scenarios, and I think it shows creativity, versatility. It trains you. It helps you uh, look at the way that colors are working, because it's not just like, oh, here's morning and here's sunset. Well, what makes the difference between morning and sunset? Why does it look like morning and why does it look like sunset? It's funny how like me and Mike will be in rounds, and someone will be the lighting supervisor will be like, no, this feels like it's morning. We need to make it feel like sunset, right? And you're like, what's the difference? And it's just subtle color differences here and there, and those tiny little adjustments make a huge difference. And when you're trying to pick the colors of morning, um, what complementary colors are working better, and all of those things like will teach you
Mm-hmm.
what colors are working, like how it makes it look, how does it make the mood change, all of those things. And it's just training yourself to keep looking at those very small details. Another thing is, when you look at real life, and you see something that looks beautiful, really observe and think to yourself, why is it beautiful? Like, this is really, really great. I love looking out there at that sunset, or at the way that the atmosphere looks through these trees right now, right? Really observe like what makes it great, and what are the actual colors. What are the colors? Because it's like, oh yeah, sunset, orange, blue, and purple. Great, nailed it. No, but what color purple? What color orange? Like, there's so many different colors of orange. You know, um,
No,
that's what I would do.
that's phenomenal. That actually leads into the next question of, so Abhishek wants to know about using reference, and how can you, I mean, you kind of answered it right there, but like, how do you utilize reference better to improve your skills?
Yeah. Well, that's the
Also,
question.
sorry,
The question.
also for finding reference. Yeah. I like ways of finding reference too.
Yeah, the question by itself is great, because you really want to go off of reference. Reference is amazing. Whenever you're lighting and you run into a problem of like, I don't know where to go from here, reference can really help you solve a lot of your problems. Okay, this is what I need to do. This is where I need to go. It gives you a really solid direction, and direction is what you always want.
Mhm.
Like I just talked about with directors, like when you have a clear direction, it makes it so much better. But finding reference, um, it's it's I guess it depends on what you're looking for, but
Yeah.
improve skills for finding reference. Um,
For me, one of the things that I always say is, because it's really hard when you're first starting, because it's like, okay, I want to find a sunset, and you Google sunset and you go looking around for it. But after you've been doing it for a little while, what I do is, I just, like you said, find things that inspire me, take a picture of them with my phone, and put it in a folder. Like I have an album in my phone that's just like pretty things I like, and then when I come back to lighting something, it usually comes back around full circle, or like having a nice library of stuff.
yeah, I definitely had libraries of stuff, and I still do on my personal computer too. But not only libraries of images, but you start to have bookmarks on your bookmark area of websites that typically give you great references or feedback, or not feedback, but references or images that you look for. Another thing is like, um, knowing the right way to type in searches, right? So, like, yeah, if you just type in like sunset, or what's a good example of this? Um, I hate I hate it when I get a whole bunch of like over processed images that aren't really helpful. So by or immature kind of photography, or like I hate getting a lot of that reference. So typing in a little bit more specific things, and I find adding photography to my searches in my Google searches to be a little bit more helpful. Or when I go to what's the website? I haven't been to it in a long, long time.
Like a Getty Images or something?
Yeah, there's.
Well, the one thing that gets me too is
What's
when you're looking for like a film reference and somebody has taken a screenshot and like done some kind of crazy color correction to it. And it's like, come on, man, just like you what was in the film. What are you doing?
Yeah, the website I don't remember the name of the website, but it turns out a lot of images, and it's a photography based website.
Like Shutter
Anyway,
Flickr or something?
yeah, it was Flickr. Yeah, thank you. God, I couldn't remember. Flickr. There's a way that you can like on the side you can switch it to like interesting, or I don't remember. Again, I don't remember the name because it's been so long since I've been there. But there's a drop down thing where you can change the way it filters what it gives you, and you can make it interesting, or you can make it dynamic, or um, contrasty, and it'll filter a lot of the results by that standard. And it made it fun to like go through and switch that up and see how it gives it to you, and find out how what you end up going to over and over again.
Mhm.
Just start your search up on that setting. don't even go to the other ones, just keep it on that one.
It's funny because I think of Flickr as being a place that I store my own photos, but yeah, it's a great search engine for other photography. It's really great advice. So Ryan wants to know, what are your thoughts on being a 3D generalist versus specializing in one area of the pipeline when looking for a job either at a large studio or small studios?
I think it's great to be versatile, especially now. Like there's so many, the industry it moves and changes so much. Like Braun, uh, I no longer work at Braun because it was a contract, right? But towards the end of my contract, they were like, okay, we're going to keep you around. We're going to definitely keep you on, full time. We want you to be here. And I'm like, okay, great. Sounds good. But then the owner of the company, Braun had a couple different divisions. This was Braun Animation. Braun Live Action had invested in like movies like The Joker and um, uh, what's the I want to say Atomic Bomb, but the the movie with Fox, the Me Too Fox movie. What was it
Oh,
called?
was that Blonde Bombshell? That one?
Bombshell. Yeah, thank you. They had done a bunch of stuff like that, and it returned a lot of money for them. And it also was quick turnaround of cash. And they didn't realize, like I said, this was their first feature animation, so they didn't realize how expensive and how long feature animation took. So when we were done, the owner came to us. He's like, "Hey guys, look, great job. I'm really impressed. We're not doing animation ever again." So they ended up going with if you guys type in YouTube Unreal Engine Indian motorcycle.
Mhm.
There's a brand called Indian Motorcycles, and if you Unreal Engine Indian motorcycle, it kind of goes through a tutorial of what Unreal Engine is doing with live action stuff. And it's the Mandalorian was made and created on this platform of it's basically a whole bunch of like rear lit LED screens put right next to each other, and there's no seam on the screens. Um, and the director of photography can get an iPad app and put a rim light on the character, and you get real-time reflections of the environment being projected on the um, on the LCD screens, or LED. It's LED, not LCD. But
The
but
LCD screens.
um, yeah. So you get real-time reflections, you get real-time lighting, and the DP can just director of photography can make it darker. He can make it bluer. He can make it more purple, like whatever he wants to do, and he can put rim lights in, like, and it's that fast. It is so fast, and it's amazing. So if you want to be, you know, in awe about some stuff. That's some really cool stuff. So Braun started partnering with those guys. The studio that did The Mandalorian had so much work come to them so quickly that they were turning away people. So they took Braun on as a partner to, continue to be able to continue accepting work from different places. And then COVID hit, and then they had to lay off everybody and send everyone home. Um, but it's working with Unreal Engine, and I don't have any experience at working with Unreal Engine. And they're like, "Look, we'll teach you." This is the great thing about once you get into the studio or into the industry, and people get to know you, it makes it a lot easier to do things. I don't know Unreal Engine, but they're like, "Let us teach you."
Mhm.
I just did. I would love to do that. I just didn't. I wasn't ready to go back to. I would have to take some steps backwards for sure,
Mhm.
and I don't know if I'm ready for that. But my point is that like the industry is constantly changing,
Mhm.
and I worked with a lot of generalists there at Braun, and um, they definitely have their place. But what I recommend, and what I recommend, I don't know if this is everybody else's opinion, but what I recommend is being super solid in one thing and then branching out, right? So you don't want to like spread yourself too thin. Once you spread yourself too thin, uh, it just doesn't work out. But what's great is knowing what happens in the full pipeline. If you're more versatile in knowing what happens in the pipeline around you, you can set yourself and future departments on the pipeline up for success. And once departments downstream see what you're doing for them, they like you a lot. And when you need a favor, they're willing to help you, and it goes a long way to know what another department's doing. So being a generalist is great, but you got to know something really well
Yeah.
to get that job.
As Jasmine just said in the chat window, jack of all trades, but a master of none. It's definitely true.
Yeah, there you go.
So Karen asked an interesting question. We haven't heard this one yet. Looking at this as a long-term career, should I be concerned about getting replaced by AI, or do you think AI will just be a great tool to make the work more efficient? Brandon May, are you going to get replaced by a computer or a robot?
No. I think it just makes us. I think it when I was in school, Pixar was a regular in my school. They would do monthly mentorships. Um, and one of the students kind of asked a similar question, and they were talking about compute. This is back in 2008, Well, it was before 2008. I graduated 2008. So this is like 2006, 2007, probably. They were talking about like the computers getting a lot quicker. Unreal Engine was becoming a big thing. And someone asked something similar, and the people at Pixar were like, "Look, the more that computers do, it just gives us more thirst to do more." So, um, and like we talked about before, we're artists, and the computers are great at certain things, but you still have to have people there to know what colors to use to make the sunset. You still have to have artists there to know what makes atmosphere look incredible, or what makes it look scary. And like you don't just have people know how to do that and have AI do everything else.
Mhm.
It
I,
doesn't
I
work
was
out.
I was related to like motion capture, and it's a lot of it is the hype of studios and software companies because they're like, oh, we've got this motion capture system that like can simulate this, and they show you like a before, and they show you the after, and they show you like capturing like the actor with all the ping pong balls on him, and then the final thing. They skip the step where all of that is broken, and they have to give it to an animator to clean up and actually make it artistic and look good. So,
Yeah.
so I was think there's always more hype around that than the reality. I
Yeah.
think,
It,
yeah, I think, okay.
Yeah, I think if anything, it just opens up. Uh, it makes it easier for artists to do,
Mhm.
which makes us be able to take on more, right? So, um, being able to set dress, a little bit more generalistic, right?
Mhm.
Being able to set dress, place materials, and light and composite, right? So if for me, I think if anything, it would just open up one person to do more in the pipeline, if that makes sense. But
Mhm.
I don't even know if that's true. Like it's
Yeah, I mean, I've been hearing about it my whole career, and it's like you said, it's been 14 years, and I don't know, like the robots haven't taken over yet, so we just keep right on
yeah.
going because it's true. It's like, um, well, Ryan just said this in the chat window. He had an old professor say that computers might help make things more realistic, but we always need humans to create other artistic styles. He says, I don't know how true that is, but it made me feel better, and I totally agree. Like it's not about being realistic. If we wanted realism, we could just shoot people in front of a camera. We've been doing that for 100 years, but we want something else.
Right. Yeah, and like Ryan just said, like I had an old professor tell me that computers might get better at creating realistic things, but we always need humans to create other artistic styles.
Mm.
And he says, I don't know how much of that is true, but it's always made me feel better. Yeah, I agree. Like, and what's interesting is like, we don't. For me, I don't care what's real. I
Yeah.
don't. I take what's real and just throw it away because it's not what I'm going for. I'm going for beyond real, and um, of course we look in the real world for inspiration and motivation. But when I'm helping make movies, it's not. I'm going beyond what's real and making it artistic, right? So yeah, it's computers are already really great at making realistic things. We can just
I like Nicholas said a good one too. He said computers keep getting faster, but render times stay the same.
it's true.
I was saying like when we started at Blue Sky, we had a render farm of like 1,000 machines, right? And now it's like 20,000 machines, but I don't get anything back any faster. It's not like it's not like things have gotten easier. It's like the render time. Yeah, render time still take. It's still. I'm still struggling to get stuff back overnight, but yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to start wrapping up. If anybody has any last questions, but I do want to say I'm so Brandon. Anytime you want to come back, you're like I said, one of my favorite people in the world because you are always honest and you never ever BS anything, and that's what I really like. Eric asked, going back to the scenes Naughty Dog sent you, were there any characters that were included, any textures, or was everything Lambert shaded?
Yeah, it was two characters and there was an environment. The camera angles would go to like between close up, wide angle, and like a bunch of various things like one of the characters sitting on this side of the room and then an opposite camera angle of the character sitting on the other side of the room, and then so the cameras moved like went all over the place, right? All Lambert shader, no materials.
Were you
There,
were you allowed to like? So the idea, I assume, is that you only could use one light rig, like one light position, for each, or did you modify it for each?
no, there was no lights given, so like it was just create a light rig, like so
Right,
create
but
a
you
lighting.
can like you can go like shot by shot and make adjustments to.
No, yeah, you were supposed to.
Okay.
Yeah, shot by shot, a tweak. Oh, I see what you're saying. So, uh, I don't think that mattered.
Okay.
They didn't specify. If I guess if you made one standard light rig where one light rig would light every single camera angle would probably be ideal. But if you're working on a cinematics team, it wouldn't matter.
Right. Right.
So,
Right. Totally. Um. Okay.
but yeah, no, there was open windows on both sides, broken glass. So I had to get an image back there, and I just went through and I found, first of all, like I went through and I looked at a whole bunch of reference, looked at a whole bunch of stuff that Naughty Dog had done, kind of their style. It's typically post-apocalyptic, natural lighting indoors because they have no electricity, so it's just sunlight coming in through open doors, open windows, whatever it is. And I got a whole bunch of Naughty Dog stuff. I got a whole bunch of real life stuff like live action photography. Um, and I looked at what I wanted to do and narrowed it down to like 5 different images and then went from there. And I went and picked background images that kind of supported the look and feel I was going for, the light direction. Because again, you want it to be like the motivation of light is the biggest thing. Like, what is the motivation? In this case, it was the sun, and I wanted the sunlight to be coming in the right direction. So I found images that would support the look I was going for and the light direction I was going for. And that's, it starts to get pretty specific. And when it gets really specific, it gets pretty hard. So Photoshop starts to come into play, doing some things. Yeah. And then in final compositing, like pushing that even a little bit further to make it look like it's going in that direction. So.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it there. Brandon, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Like I said, anytime that you want to come back, we're trying out this format of just bringing people in and just chatting with you and seeing how things go. Thank you guys all for joining in and asking great questions. Brandon, if you could hang out for just a minute, I do just want to say hi as a friend too. So
cool. Yeah.
But thank you guys all so much. And you're getting tons of thank yous now in the chat window.
Oh yeah. Great to be here. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. We're going to be doing this again next week. And Brandon, if you want to come back, we're bringing John Kalajian on. John is, he's an artist at Blue Sky, but he also works with SIGGRAPH. And he's going to be talking to us about what SIGGRAPH is going to be looking like this year. Because they just announced kind of their format. So there's going to be a lot of online stuff. There's going to be lectures you can check out, but we're going to kind of talk him through what that process is, because I genuinely don't know what SIGGRAPH is going to look like this year. But I do know that they're going to do something, because they're not going to give everyone their money back. So that's how that's going to work. All right. Everyone but Brandon, I will talk to you all very soon. Happy lighting, everyone.
Right. See you guys.
Bye.